Here we go. Another San Francisco 49ers victory. It's all too common against those Seattle Seahawks these days, sweeping them again this season. 28-16, the final, rapid react style. More ejections, more Deebo Yak, more McCaffrey on the left side behind Trent Williams, and another 49ers victory coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed like the everydayers on YouTube or everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. 28-16, Croc. 49ers defeating the Seattle Seahawks. I want to start with the end of the game because we had another melee on the field. 2 weeks, 2 more ejections for the 49ers. A lot of similarities to last week's game. And this time it was Fred Warner, all-pro Fred, and DK Metcalf sent off after getting locked up in, at the end of the game. Big interception. By the way, Fred Warner doing Jair Brown dirty and just flying in out of nowhere and stealing that interception. Jair Brown was camped underneath it like it was a punt return, getting ready to pick off that ball that was flopping around in the air, and Fred Warner just goes Superman dive in front of him and stole it away, and then hits first of all, pitches it to Dre Greenlaw. So that was fun. And you see Dre Greenlaw running back and forth, and all this time there's a melee happening on the field. And anyways, guys get sent off. Game was already pretty much over at that point. It was a 49ers victory, Croc, taking about a 4-game lead on the NFC West. Now we're going to start talking about clinching the West at this point. Like this has become a laugher this season for the 49ers, walking away from the rest of the division. 28-16 win against the Seahawks. Did you get excited for the fight at the end of the game, Croc?
I did, and I see people in the chat correcting you. It was Lenore that got ejected. Lenore and Metcalf, as opposed to Warner. But I think Warner had a big hand in why the ejection happened, kind of shoving DK to the ground after he pitched the ball to Dre Greenlaw. But, I like it. It shows some feistiness. And, I watched a lot of Diamador Lenore throughout this game, and he was chippy with DK. DK is a big bully. And on the first drive of the game, he had 2 receptions, 52 yards, did not have a single catch for the rest of the game. Diamador Lenore had what should have been an interception late in the second half, but due to Nick Bosa's false start, trying to get a head start to the quarterback, it negated an interception by Lenore. He played exceptionally well. I know we're going to talk a lot about the offense and the firepower, but shout out to the defense for getting some stops, getting some takeaways, and Lenore playing big time against a big-time receiver.
Yeah, in the chat, Ada's daddy says teams want to try to prove they're the bullies against the Niners, and it's backfiring every time. Yeah, that's tough. It's tough to play that way against the 49ers.
That goes back to, 2021, the playoffs, and the 49ers were going into Dallas, and everybody's like, oh, I think the 49ers are going to beat Dallas. Like, 49ers, they're just this physical team, they're bullies. And I remember Michael Parsons saying, you can't bully a bully. I'm from wherever he's from in Pittsburgh or whatever it was. And it's in people's minds. Like when you play the 49ers, you have to kind of play this different brand that you typically don't face for a lot of teams. I think it's the 49ers, probably like Baltimore Ravens, kind of play that bully ball type of mentality. They got the big guys. 49ers have like finesse guys that are also physical, but teams have to try to match that energy, that physicality. And when they try to do that, they kind of become something that they're really not, and it ends up really hurting them. So it is kind of fun to watch games like that.
To be honest, this might not be a popular take here on the podcast and in the chat. I kind of see why DK Metcalf would have been a little ticked off right there, because Warner got him in the back of the head, like when he's that's not necessarily the way you want to bully somebody. You want to hit him in the mouth. You don't want to hit him in the back of the head. And so I can see why DK Metcalf was mad. And it doesn't take a lot to get DK Metcalf mad either. And I was surprised. I thought DK was going to start throwing swings, and then they kind of locked up, and then things kind of escalated from there. Demo was heated. He was just like a a dog on a chain to just like, he was mad. He wanted in there, and someone pulled him away, and he ran back in. He's like trying to dig into the pile and then find DK Metcalf. But
what we don't know is what DK said to Lenoir throughout the game, right? Like DK is a big time trash talker. We've heard sound bites of him and Jimmy Ward. He's calling people the B word. He's, like overly aggressive, trying to impose his will on guys. So I bet, I don't think that Diamador Lenoir, who calls himself the hyena, I don't think he was that turned up for no reason. Just watching him, he broke up a pass, like he's turned up. I see him going back to the huddle. He's yelling. He's like, matter of fact, let's give a game ball to Diamador Lenoir right now for the job he did on DK, especially after that first drive. He had a big catch on. DK had a catch on Travarius Ward. Then he had a big catch on Ambry Thomas.
Yeah.
Nothing on Diamador Lenoir, who was on him like white on rice. So he was extra turned up, but I bet DK probably aggravated him throughout the game just with the way that he talks. Yeah,
there was a couple of times when they were talking after the game, like they were having a really deep discussion. It wasn't even angry. They were like, kind of like, oh yeah, this and that. It was like, oh man, really? It was like a long conversation after one of the plays between DK and Diamador Lenoir. Fantastic job by the secondary. The big interception by Jair Brown, almost had another one. And it was funny because early in that game, it was a nice throw from Drew Lock on that touchdown to DK Metcalf. There wasn't a lot of space there. He put it over the top, allowed his big guy to get it over a smaller guy. But then later in the game, Drew Lock just started doing more and more weird stuff, throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage. The interception by Jair Brown, he had DK. There was plenty of space for him to throw it over the top toward the sideline, and he just didn't. With a back throw, Diamador Lenoir got the interception. They got called back as well on just a weird throw from Drew Lock. And so that was the difference, because early, and I know it looked like it could be a blowout when the 49ers go down in 2 plays and score, but props to the Seahawks for staying in it and staying competitive. And Drew Lock looked like, okay, he's going to be okay. But that's what you see when someone's not that good and your team is better. Eventually, you just come out on top, and they kind of walked away from him in this one.
I posted the infamous video. Everybody knows it's coming, but I posted it right away. You had, from the jump, a really long run from Christian McCaffrey to set the 49ers up for a short touchdown. And right there, I said, this game is going to get away from Seattle really quick. Now, kudos to them. They not only hang around, I think, did they have the lead a little bit early on in that game? But, they played well. They kept it competitive, especially for a team coming in. You don't have your starting quarterback. You're playing with Drew Lock, who's a backup. They made it look competitive for a while. Definitely got to talk about a Kyle Shanahan decision before the half. I thought that was hella weird. But overall, I think Seattle did a good job of just keeping this game a little bit more entertaining than I think it probably could have been, especially right away.
Man, I want to give a game ball right away to Big Trent Williams, number 71. Christian McCaffrey deserves a game ball, and I think he leads the league in game balls right now. Christian McCaffrey, with the season he's having statistically, 145 rushing yards, Croc, on 16 carries, 9.1 per carry for Christian McCaffrey in this game. He had the 72-yarder on the first play from scrimmage. He had another reception, but so much. I would venture to guess, I don't know what the numbers are. I would think that 120 of those 145 yards came on the left side behind Trent Williams. Trent Williams just walling guys off, blocking 2 blockers at a time. I can't wait for the all 22, because when you see the end zone angle of some of those runs, there's so much space there. So give a game ball to Christian McCaffrey, and he's phenomenal. But Trent Williams is just a dude, and he did a number on the Seahawks up front in the blocking game, in the run game. And it's like Vince Lombardi, right? Is the old famous. The famous video of him is like, all right, you want to seal here? You want to seal here? I mean, Trent Williams, I know he's silverback. He should be a seal. He's the human seal, because he seals that wall off inside, and like nobody gets by him. And there was a lot of big running lanes for McCaffrey, especially on the left side. And they go back to the right side and they're like, not as good. Let's go back to the left. Boom, 20 more yards. It was phenomenal. So 49ers beat the Seahawks in a lot of ways, and they won the game up front. And it started with big 71.
72-yard run right away, right off that left side. On the next drive, I believe it was, or shortly after that, 49ers came right back to it, running on that left side. Had a nice game from Christian McCaffrey there, and I think that kind of really set the tone for how the 49ers are going to run. I think they tried to mix in running to the right side, and there was a holding call, and I believe it was maybe Feliciano at some point, but you could see where they feel comfortable running, and it's definitely behind arguably one of the best tackles in all of football.
All right, more from this game. I want to talk about the passing game. Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy, and Mitch Wishnowsky. Unfortunate play that is never going to exist in the stat book. But you know what, Croc? It's going to remain in our minds and our memories forever. More Rapid React 49ers Seahawks next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Whether or not your family gives gifts during this holiday season, maybe your family gives the gift of donating time, donating money, whatever it is that your family does during the holidays, whether they celebrate a lot, celebrate a little, give a lot of gifts, you get to define how you give to yourself. And it is very important not to forget yourself during the holidays. And the holiday season is a great time to do that with BetterHelp. So whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or just not putting so much pressure on yourself, give yourself a complete day of rest when you get some off time during the holidays and not rushing around and doing everything for everybody else all the time. Remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. And if you've been thinking about giving therapy a try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is you fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist. If you don't like that therapist, you don't hit it off. That happens. You can switch therapists anytime, no additional charge. So in the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Deebo Samuel is a man possessed. I don't know if there's like a switch that he flips, but he's always a really good player, and he's always, the yak god, the slant god, as we call him, coming out of South Carolina, right? He can take a short pass to the house anytime. But the last couple of weeks, Croc, he's looked like that unicorn of a player we saw for the 2021 season. And maybe it's an even year, odd year thing for Deebo Samuel. I know he talked about how he wasn't in good shape and he was trash last year. I can't remember what awful I think he said he was last year. But he's been amazing the last 2 weeks, just running over dudes, running through dudes, running around dudes. And something we don't see a lot from Deebo, a deep ball over the shoulder, a beautiful rainbow throw from Brock Purdy, dropped right in the bucket for Deebo Samuel, outracing Jamal Adams to the end zone for a long over-the-top touchdown. So adding that to his resume as well, and you don't always see that from Deebo Samuel. That was really fun to see, and the 49ers we're cooking again on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about the 146 yards or 145 yards rushing for Christian McCaffrey. He got just outdone by Deebo Samuel, who had 149 yards on 7 receptions, including the 54-yarder. And I think he did have another carry or two. Did I? Oh, yeah, he had the 1-yard touchdown run as well. And so 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving for Deebo Samuel. I think that was Kyle Shanahan, by the way, because he was down at the 1-yard line going, yeah, Deebo, this is your score. Here you go.
Yeah, shout out to Kyle Shanahan for, giving this guy his touchdown. He worked all the way down there to the half-yard line. Could have easily given that to Christian McCaffrey, but he said, no, let's get Deebo in the end zone. I love that. Let's talk about his first touchdown. And, I'm not really like a big schematic guy, X's and O's, because I don't know exactly what they're told to do. But, watching that play was very clear that Jamal Adams had to carry the third receiver streaking through the middle of the field. So whether Deebo Samuel kind of ran towards him and hooked up, or if he went vertical, Jamal Adams was responsible for carrying that. One thing I noticed from Jamal Adams and what he did, while he's looking inside right at Deebo coming towards him, he looks at the quarterback, and I think he was trying to see if he could cheat and maybe rob a throw from Brock Purdy. And instead, there was no hookup. There was no hitting a guy in that window, which I think that's what he was hoping for. It was a guy screaming right by you. And Brock Purdy did a terrific job laying that right in there for Deebo Samuel, hit him in stride, big touchdown catch.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal throw, phenomenal call. And the Seahawks clearly early were trying to come down and crush 49ers receivers over the middle of the field, the first 2 throws of the game. George Kittle got blasted both times, right? They were trying to go old school and turn some of those in-breaking routes into hospital balls. And you don't see that a lot anymore. I think that's the biggest difference in the game today versus the game in the past. A lot of routes the 49ers call and run, teams wouldn't even try back in the day because guys would get lit up. And I think that was sort of the idea from the Seahawks from jump. They're like, look, you're going to run these digs all day. We're we might even try to pick some off, but we're for sure going to make you pay the price for going over the middle field on us. And so they hit him with that early. And I don't know if it was sort of a clear out route by Deebo Samuel on that one, but I don't think he expected to get it. And Brock Purdy saw it and says, dude, I'm letting it go. So you better get on your horse. And Deebo did. And Deebo utilized that burst to go run that down and catch that ball and take it to the house. So I don't know if it was more of a clear out route from him and Purdy was just aggressive with it and saw the opportunity and threw it, or if it was designed to go that way. But it did look like it surprised Deebo a little bit because he was kind of running 3/4 speed on that route at one point, and then I had to get on it to go run down that deep ball. And another beautiful throw by Brock Purdy, which can we talk about Purdy for a second as well? Because
hold on. I do want to say something about Deebo. I did hear the announcers talk about that as well, where Deebo maybe looked a little surprised by the throw coming to him. You got to stay ready, right? One thing I've heard Brandon Ayuk say is, the play might be designed to go here, but, one thing that they really like about Brock Purdy is he will find you, like regardless of if that was a part of his initial read. So you got to run, regardless of if you think the ball is coming to you or not. Now, the thing I don't know is, was Deebo reading Jamal Adams? I talked about how Jamal Adams maybe thought he was going to hook up his route, and then Deebo ended up screaming past him. Was Deebo reading him to where it's like, hey, if he's squatting, I'm going to go by him. If he's drifting, then I'm going to sit it down. And maybe that's why he wasn't running 100% full speed. That could be the case. But regardless, great find by Brock Purdy.
Yeah, and so really using what the Seahawks were showing early in the game against them and going over the top. And that's what's been missing from the 49ers offense in the Jimmy Garoppolo era. Because Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have those aggressive eyes that Brock Purdy, like Garoppolo's for sure throwing that the hook or whatever it was on the left side of that route, right? That I think maybe Jamal Adams was kind of peeking at as well, or dig or whatever's happening on the backside of that play. But Brock Purdy's aggressive. If he sees it, he'll throw it and take advantage of it, and he throws it accurately. Brock Purdy, I think people who don't watch Brock Purdy don't understand how good he is throwing the deep ball because of how accurately he throws it. And he throws it up early enough. He doesn't have a cannon arm. He's not throwing it 60 air yards, right? He's throwing it 37 air yards, 42 air yards, but he's dropping it in the bucket. He's making perfect throws, and it creates huge plays. And it's not a dink and dunk offense. It's that aggressively intermediate offense that Kyle Shanahan has always run. But now you have the element of Brock Purdy, who creates a little bit with his legs and then can hit you over the top with an accurate deep ball, which is so important. And you can take advantage of teams trying to rob you over the middle of the field. And it's a huge element to this 49ers team that they haven't had in the Kyle Shanahan era. And it's really exciting to watch. So I get pumped seeing those types of throws from Brock Purdy. And teams have to play you honestly, which means it's going to either open it up for those deep balls, or it's going to keep it open underneath where Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy really want to operate.
Terrific job by Brock Purdy throughout this game of improvising. And, I had said it on one of the plays. It might have been the Brandon Ayuk. He hit Brandon Ayuk on a big play after halftime. And it was like, man, this is just all improvisation, right? Being able to kind of buy time, get outside the pocket, keeping his eyes down the field. You talked about him being aggressive with his eyes, throwing a beautiful, perfect pass on the money to Brandon Ayuk. I thought that was a really terrific play. And then shortly after that, he had another kind of improvisation type play throwing to, I want to say it might have been the one that got Deebo Samuel to the 1 yard line. So, we talk about, quick game or the scheme and things like that, but also those plays that you need outside of the scheme. And I think Brock Purdy has been terrific with doing that very consistently, really throughout his tenure with the 49ers.
I want to go back to Ada's daddy again in the chat. It says Purdy is our Drew Brees. And I want to shout out one of our longtime listeners that goes by the name of, I hope I saved it here, Jake. Yeah. Jake on Twitter hit me up earlier this week and thanked us for Jake's been a listener since 2018 and wanted to shout us out. We're getting a lot of the Spotify end of year stuff, and it's phenomenal hearing from listeners for how much they listen all year long and how long they've been listening. And I started doing this it's my 7-year anniversary of Locked On 49ers coming up in January, Croc. It's been almost 7 years, January of 2017. A week before Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were hired is when I started Locked On 49ers. It's been a pretty fun run, a pretty fun team to cover these 7 years. But Jake also had a tweet from 2020, Croc. Now, this is from the season before So a year plus before Brock Purdy was drafted, he said, at BD Peacock, not sure how much college film you've got through, but what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy out of Iowa State? He gives me Cousins, Drew Brees vibes, and we would be able to draft him in the later rounds, an instant backup with starter potential. So shout out Jake, who nailed the Brock Purdy scouting report a year before he was even in the NFL draft. This was right before the 49ers ended up trading up for Trey Lance. So shout out to Jake, and shout out to all the longtime listeners. And one more big shout out to Jake, who nailed the Brock Purdy. And I do like the Drew Brees comp. It's blasphemous to talk about 49ers greats. It just feels a little bit easier to talk about Drew Brees and be like, yeah, you know what? There are some Drew Brees qualities from Brock Purdy. And so I like that comp. So shout out.
So I threw out Drew Brees just now. Got my brothers here. We're watching the game, getting ready to watch the Cowboys. Here we go. Right. Getting ready to watch the Dallas Cowboys. And here we go. And I threw out Drew Brees. I said, because they're still trying to wrap their head around what Brock Purdy is. I'm like,
your brothers are haters. Let's put it. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Definitely haters. It's like at this point, if you can't accept what Brock Purdy is, he's getting mad over here. I'm gonna mute my mic so you guys can't hear him. But at this point, if you can't accept what Brock Purdy is and what he's doing at the level that he's doing that, definitely just a hater. Definitely a hater. Now, are we saying that? He's gonna make. It's not gonna look like another guy. Like it's not gonna look quite like the high of Patrick Mahomes. But I'll take his consistency. Not saying over Mahomes, but the consistency that you get from him at the level in which he's doing it. I mean, it'd be hard to find a quarterback that's been more consistent playing at that level throughout this season. He's playing that well.
All right, next, we'll give out our final game balls and finish up this Rapid React episode. 49ers sweeping the Seattle Seahawks at 10-3, up 4 games now on the Seahawks and the Rams, who had a brutal loss to the Ravens, who the 49ers are going to see very soon as well. So we'll get to that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Get $20 off your next ticket purchase. More on that in a minute, because when you're buying tickets, you should be excited for your next big event that you're going to. And Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of the NFL games, 49ers games, sporting events, music, comedy, theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, so it's not a headache trying to get those tickets for your next big event. I love that you can see your seats, a view from what you're going to be seeing when you are there. You know exactly what you're getting when you arrive. And best of all in prices show you total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal without those hidden fees that I hate at the last minute when you're about to check out when you are buying tickets. So couple taps, Gametime app, you buy the tickets, and they're right there in the app. You don't have to go fishing through your email, and go enjoy your next big event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that is $20 off your first purchase. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL with Gametime. All right, so we got McCaffrey, we got big Trent Williams, we got Brock Purdy, we got Deebo Samuel game balls. We got Deommodore Lenoir, right? Got ejected, but he got himself a game ball. He earned that game ball before he was ejected from the game. What else are we looking at here? I think tomorrow, right, Croc, we're going to do a little bit deeper dive on rookie safety Jair Brown. And he came up with the interception on that deep ball attempt from Drew Lock to DK Metcalf in the second half of the game. But he also got shook by a tight end on that. By the way, they stole the 49ers play. That was a straight up. I don't want to say it was an FU necessarily to Kyle Shanahan, but that was like a little, hey, we're going to go tight end, fake screen over the middle of the field. And Parkinson found his way into the end zone. And if you're 27, you can't put that on tape where you get juked by a tight end. But overall, Jair Brown, I think, been pretty good. But I'm really interested to see the deep dive from you and talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Do a little film work on Jair Brown.
Yeah, shout out to Jair Brown. Nice interception, and it's funny because as soon as Drew Lock let the ball go, I said interception, and my brothers, they thought like, oh, did you see it before it happened? And I'm like, nah, like the way he threw the ball and I saw the coverage kind of drift over there. I'm like, that's going to be picked off. So shout out to them. I do want to address one of the comments in the chat, and it's up, pretty far. I didn't start it, but someone talked about how 49ers gave up 300 yards to Drew Lock. And I have said this a lot. The thing I care about probably least, like passing yards, and again, if you give up a ton of passing yards, but the team has 18 points or whatever they scored, like I can live with that. So give up 300 passing yards, but they scored 18 points. And I feel like they really struggled to even score that. Like the run game had more to do with kind of scoring that, as opposed to a quarterback just dicing you up. There was some late game throws to Tyler Lockett, and you talked about the fake screen touchdown, cool. But overall, I thought the 49ers defended Drew Lock and the Seattle Seahawks extremely well on the back end. So, I mean, can you think of a time in the game where it's just like, man, these guys, they just cannot cover these Seattle players? Like, that never crossed my mind. So you get 300 yards in that kind of game, like mop-up duty. I don't mind that at all. I think the defense played very well. Couple interceptions, great job.
Yeah, there was the interception that Demo picked off that got called back because Bosa was offsides or whatever it was. And at that point, they put Drew Lock's stat line on the screen. And it was something like, 20 of 28 for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Looks like a good stat line. And I was like, what? That stat line looks a lot better than what's happening right now on the football field. So I totally agree. Like you look at the scorecard and you look at the box score here, and Drew Lock was 22 of 31 for 269 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And without the interceptions, that would be an amazing line. And there was the third pick that didn't end up happening as well. That looks even better than what we saw on the field. Like that's the 49ers kind of handled that game. There was the early touchdown to DK. It was a great answer by the Seahawks, but once the Niners were up 14-10, it just felt like it was inevitable the 49ers were going to walk away. And I think they beat them worse than the 28-16 final score as well. But speaking of halftime, Croc, I think we got to talk about this one. And maybe the reason I don't want to give a game ball to Kyle Shanahan, because no timeouts. What was that? Even Nick Bosa, you could see Nick Bosa. He's looking up at the scoreboard and the clock, and he's talking to whoever's next to him on the defensive line. Like, why isn't Kyle Shanahan why isn't Kyle Shanahan calling a timeout? Just like every single 49ers fan and everybody in the building, I think they even booed a little bit. It was like, what are you doing? You've got him backed up. Get the ball back with a minute left with half a field. You got to go 10, 15 yards and kick a field goal. Like that seems like the no-brainer of no-brainerist. Call timeout, get the ball back. So I don't know where.
Give me your best reasoning as to why you think he did that.
I don't know. This wasn't like the Super Bowl scenario either, because some people were talking about, this is what he did against Kansas City, got conservative. In Kansas City, I could see how Kyle would be worried that instead of getting the ball back and scoring, he would allow the Chiefs to score again. I could see how that would go through his mind. I hated that at the time too, but this was even worse.
You want to keep away from them. So it's like, okay, we do got the rock. Let's see. I don't give him time on the clock to be able to drive down and score. Yeah, this definitely was not that.
No, this was not that at all. There was no downside to this. They're backed up. You think they're going to drive 95 yards down the field on you or whatever, right? They were, where'd they have the ball? Something like the 5-yard line or something like that, right?
Well, after the penalty, it was 2nd and 13. So for those of you, if you didn't quite catch it, what happened was Drew Lock rolled out to his right. He passed the line of scrimmage, threw the ball. So what they did was basically say, you pass the line of scrimmage. So from where he threw the ball, they pushed it back 5 yards and he lost it down. So now 2nd and 13 from the 7-yard line or something, or 6-yard line, something like that. So at that point, especially when you have 3 timeouts, you assume 49ers call a timeout so it stops the clock. And then you have 2 more timeouts to where, hey, they punt the ball. They're getting the ball back. You're getting the ball at midfield, right? Like you're getting the ball back. The punter is going to have to punt out of his own end zone. And Kyle just did not call a timeout to stop the clock, which I thought was weird. And I thought maybe that was a mistake. I look at my bros. I'm like, nah, he's definitely going to call a timeout. Maybe they said the 49ers accepted the penalty or chose not to call a timeout, and that's a mistake. And maybe the ref is going to go back and talk to Kyle. Oh, you do want, okay, timeout, 49ers, that's their first charge timeout. Well, the clock kept running and running and running, and then they ran the ball, and the clock kept running. I was, what are you doing? Like, there's no better situation. You're not kicking their butts right now. Like, you're up, and you're handling the game, but there's no better situation to say, oh, man, we have a great opportunity before the half. So for all the good that Kyle did today, coaching, and you see, how things were schemed up and guys running open and your quarterback hitting them, that was extremely weird to not get the ball back before the half.
And I'm sure he's been asked that question already. We went immediately live, so I haven't heard the press conference or anything. If I had to guess, and I don't know if he'll admit it, but I think maybe he was probably just not paying attention. He was thinking about something else. And then once he missed the opportunity to get the timeout in a timely fashion, is like, oh, okay, let's pack it in. I think that's what happened. I think maybe he's having a conversation on his headset about something else, and he missed the moment when he could have maximized the time, and then just said, screw it. I really think that it was that, because I don't think there's any advantage to not calling a timeout there. There's nothing. It's not even conservative. It's just they missed the opportunity. It's the only explanation.
Still confused by that. And Seattle got the ball back out of half. Now, obviously, they didn't do anything with it, but that's even more of a reason to say, okay, let's get a stop here. Let's get the ball back, try to score it. Maybe we just get 3. Cool. And then, okay, they get the ball back after half. All right, we're in good position. It was very odd. Very odd. Can't wait to hear. Again, he's probably live right now talking. He probably has already been asked about it, but I can't wait to hear the explanation for it.
They didn't cover the 14 points. I think it was 14 and a half by the time the game kicked off. The 49ers were favored because Drew Lock was announced as the quarterback, but they still won it by 12, 28-16. 49ers did handle the Seattle Seahawks and really have their number now. And the Seahawks and the Rams both in a tough spot. More about the NFC West. And I'm sure this week now, with the 49ers with such a big lead in the division, we're going to have to start talking about scenarios for clinching the division. So that's where the 49ers are right now after only 14 weeks of this NFL season. I do want to thank everybody who jumped in the live chat with us on this Rapid React show. More to come. A little rewatch on tomorrow's episode. Of course, we got to talk about Mitch Wishnowsky. We didn't get time today, Croc, but our guy Wink does the Wink Wish Watch every single Wednesday on Winky Wednesday. So that's our day to talk special teams. And Mitch Wishnowsky really, I think, maybe play of the year type stuff if it didn't get called back, Croc. That's how excited I was about the Mitch Wishnowsky rumble that wasn't.
Hey, before we get out of here, we are rooting for the Cowboys, right? I was rooting for Chicago too. Like, it's not just a Dallas Cowboy thing. I was rooting for Chicago. Chicago beat the Lions. So give us that space.
Rooting for Chicago is very different than rooting for the Cowboys. I'm rooting against the Eagles. I will never root for the Cowboys. I saw one of the worst images I've ever seen in my life today, Croc. I could not believe it. It was a 49ers helmet. Instead of an SF logo, it was a star on the side of the helmet.
See, now I'm not going that far. I joke around with the here we go, and we them boys. I joke around with that, but I'm not. It's all fun and games, but you can't take it that far, 49er fans.
That's too far. Root against the Eagles, not for the Cowboys. There we go. All right. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.
Here we go.